The most terrifying weapon human armies bring to war. Let me know if you'd like me to adjust or proceed to the next section. The flagship Helcrin Vortex, a gleaming testament to Zelthanian technological superiority, hovered ominously over the lush, uncolonized planet of Jaren 5. Below, waves of insected war drones patrolled the jagged valleys and forests, their claws slicing through the underbrush as they sought to secure the landing zones. The Zelthanian commander, General Relaxin, paced within the war room, his smooth metallic exoskeleton shimmering under the room's harsh green lighting. Relaxin's antennae twitched as his advisor, a younger Zelthanian named Drevix, approached. "General," Drevix began, his voice tinged with unease, "the humans have deployed a response team." Relaxin paused, letting the weight of the words hang in the air. "Humans?" he echoed, his mandibles clicking. "What can a species barely out of its cradle do against us? They lack the sophistication to match our firepower." Drevix hesitated. "It's not their technology that concerns me, sir. It's them." Relaxin snorted, a low, guttural sound. "Frightened by organic bipeds? Their soft flesh makes them weak. Deploy the drones in formation Omega-9 and prepare to neutralize their threat." Meanwhile, aboard the U.N.S, Valor, Earth's most advanced, yet still relatively primitive, battlecruiser, a group of soldiers stood in the mess hall, their banter light-hearted but their eyes betraying their nerves. Among them was Captain Marissa Lin, a tactical genius with a reputation for turning dire situations into improbable victories. As the crew prepared for the mission, an unassuming figure stepped into the room. Dr. Ethan Calloway, the Valor's lead cultural strategist, carried a small duffel bag. Unlike the soldiers clad in armored exosuits, Ethan wore a standard-issue uniform and a bemused expression. "Calloway!" Sergeant Ramirez called out, waving a fork. "What's in the bag? Bringing snacks to a gunfight?" Ethan grinned. "You'll see. It's a little unconventional." Marissa raised an eyebrow. "We're heading into an active war zone. Care to elaborate?" Ethan placed the bag on the table, unzipping it to reveal its contents. Inside was a collection of seemingly mundane items: chalk, a few holographic projectors, and a stack of thick books labeled *. Interstellar Conflict Resolution for Dummies. *. The room fell silent before erupting into laughter. Ramirez doubled over, slapping the table. "You're gonna lecture the bugs to death." Marissa, however, wasn't laughing. "Calloway, if you're serious, you'd better have a damn good reason." Ethan leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "The Zelthanians are a prideful race. They see us as primitives, and they've built their strategy around that assumption. But pride is their weakness. We're not going to beat them with brute force, we're going to dismantle their perception of control." Hours later, the team landed in the heart of a dense jungle, the humid air thick with tension. Ethan stood out in the crowd of heavily armed soldiers, carrying his bag of seemingly useless items. They approached a clearing where Zelthanian drones patrolled in a synchronized grid. Marissa gave the signal, and the team fanned out, ready to engage. But instead of joining the soldiers, Ethan crouched by a boulder and began setting up his equipment. He activated the projectors, which created holograms of towering, monstrous figures that snarled and glowed with menacing energy. From the safety of their vantage point, the Zelthanian drones hesitated. Their programming faltered as they attempted to analyze the unexpected figures. Meanwhile, Ethan grabbed a piece of chalk and started drawing intricate symbols on the ground. "What the hell are you doing?" Ramirez hissed. "Creating doubt," Ethan replied. "The Zelthanians rely on their belief in their superiority. If we show them something they can't explain, they'll hesitate. And in war, hesitation is death." As the first wave of drones faltered, Marissa saw an opening. "Team Alpha, advance! Use the confusion!" The jungle erupted into chaos as Earth soldiers exploited the gap, and Ethan's plan began to unfold. The jungle's thick canopy exploded with noise as Earth soldiers surged forward, weaving through foliage with precision. Plasma bolts from Zelthanian drones carved paths of molten destruction into the terrain, but the humans were fast, their exosuits amplifying their speed and agility. Captain Marissa Lynn barked orders through her comms. Team Beta, flank right. Delta, cover the perimeter. Keep them guessing. Ethan Calloway, crouched behind his makeshift station of holographic projectors and chalk symbols, observed the chaos with a mix of awe and nervous energy. His holograms, giant, snarling beasts and swirling storms, continued to project into the clearing, creating an eerie tableau of surreal threats. The Zelthanian drones, programmed to assess and neutralize, hesitated as their logic processors failed to categorize the strange illusions. But the drones weren't the real problem. From the treeline, a larger figure emerged, a Zelthanian ground commander. Its chitinous armor gleamed with shifting colors, and its 4 arms wielded plasma blades with deadly precision. Its multifaceted eyes scanned the battlefield, focusing on the humans with an unsettling intensity. Marissa saw it immediately. Ground commander spotted! Priority target! Ramirez, with me! Ramirez, carrying a heavy pulse cannon, joined her. How do we take that thing down? We don't, Marissa replied, her voice steady. We distract it. Calloway needs time. Ethan didn't notice the new threat at first. His focus was on the intricate pattern he was carving into the dirt with a laser etcher, a design that looked like a mix of earth glyphs and alien geometries. Calloway, Marissa's voice cut through his concentration. We've got a commander on the field. Do you have a plan B? Ethan didn't look up. This is plan B. Care to share? I'm turning their pride into paranoia, Ethan said. Just keep it off me for another minute. Marissa cursed under her breath. Ramirez, we're the line. Let's move! The Zelthanian commander charged, its plasma blades slicing through trees like paper. Marissa and Ramirez unleashed a barrage of firepower, forcing it to zigzag and lose momentum. Despite its agility, the human's precision weaponry kept it at bay. Meanwhile, Ethan activated the next phase of his plan. The holograms shifted, morphing into images of humans performing impossible feats, leaping over starships, tearing apart drones with bare hands, wielding glowing, otherworldly weapons. The images were exaggerated, almost cartoonish, but that was the point. The Zelthanian forces watching the battlefield feeds faltered. Reports flooded General Relaxon's command center aboard the Helcran vortex. Commander, new visual anomalies detected, an officer reported. Our drones are losing cohesion, and ground units are reporting irrational threats. Relaxon's mandibles clicked in frustration. Irrational? What nonsense is this? Recalibrate their threat parameters. It's not working, sir. The humans, what they're showing us, it doesn't make sense. Relaxon paused, his pride warring with a creeping sense of unease. Deploy the second wave, he ordered. Overwhelm them with numbers. Back on the ground, the Zelthanian drones began pouring into the clearing. Hundreds of them, their metallic forms gleaming as they advanced in perfect unison. The human soldiers braced themselves, their weapons primed. Calloway! Marissa shouted. We're out of time! Ethan stood, his pattern finally complete. He grabbed a small device from his bag, a prototype signal amplifier, and placed it at the center of the glyph. With a flick of a switch, the amplifier hummed to life, emitting a low-frequency pulse. The jungle fell silent. The Zelthanian drones froze mid-step, their heads swiveling as if searching for something unseen. The ground commander halted its charge, its plasma blades dimming. What did you do? Ramirez asked, his voice hushed. Ethan smiled grimly. I didn't just show them illusions. I made them believe they're the ones under observation. The amplifier's pulse disrupted the Zelthanians' neural uplink, injecting subtle signals that mimicked their own surveillance tech. To the Zelthanians, it now appeared as though the humans were studying them, analyzing their weaknesses, predicting their moves. For a species driven by pride and control, the implication was devastating. The Zelthanian commander roared, its blades reigniting. But it wasn't charging the humans. It slashed through its own drones, a frantic attempt to root out what it perceived as infiltrators. The battlefield descended into chaos as the Zelthanians turned on one another. Ethan sank to the ground, exhaustion overtaking him. "Marissa," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've got a window. Let's not waste it." Marissa nodded. "All teams, push forward. Drive them out." As the humans advanced, Ethan watched his plan unfold. The Zelthanians' greatest strength, their unity and coordination, had become their greatest weakness. And all it had taken was a little human ingenuity. The humans pressed their advantage, their exocets tearing through the chaotic battlefield with relentless precision. Zelthanian drones, once a symbol of their empire's technological might, crumbled under the weight of their internal conflict and the humans' focused assault. Marissa led the charge, her pulse rifle tearing through what few drones still followed their original directives. Behind her, Ramirez provided cover fire, his heavy cannon emitting pulses of blue energy that shredded the alien constructs. Every step forward felt like a triumph, but Marissa's instincts told her this wasn't over. Ethan stumbled as he tried to keep up, his gear weighing him down after the intense effort of crafting the illusion. "This can't hold forever," he warned over comms. "The Zelthanians are proud, but they're not stupid. They'll figure it out. Then we'll finish this before they can," Marissa replied, scanning the clearing for their next move. Her eyes locked on a massive, dome-shaped structure in the distance. It pulsed with an eerie green light, a stark contrast to the natural tones of the jungle. "Is that their uplink?" Ramirez asked, following her gaze. Ethan nodded. "It's their command relay. Take that out, and their coordination is permanently shot." Marissa frowned. "Easier said than done. That thing's going to be heavily guarded." As if in response, the dome emitted a high-pitched whine. From the jungle around it, a fresh wave of Zelthanian troops emerged. Unlike the disoriented drones from earlier, these were organic soldiers, tall, bipedal, and clad in bioarmor that shimmered like liquid glass. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy, and their movements were unnervingly synchronized. Marissa swore under her breath. "Well, that's new." The human forces regrouped, forming a defensive line as the Zelthanian soldiers advanced. These weren't mindless drones, they moved with purpose, flanking and probing for weaknesses in the humans' formation. Marissa's voice crackled over the comms. "Ethan, tell me you've got another trick up your sleeve." Ethan was already working, his hands flying over the controls of a portable terminal. "Not a trick, exactly. More like a gamble." "I love those," Ramirez muttered sarcastically. Ethan ignored him, focusing on his terminal. "The glyph I carved earlier? It wasn't just a distraction. It was part of a larger sequence, something to disrupt their bioarmor systems. If I can broadcast it through their relay, we can turn their strength into a weakness." "That's great," Marissa replied. "But how do we get you close enough to do that?" The answer came in the form of a sudden explosion. One of the human squads had rigged a series of charges, creating a temporary breach in the Zelthanians' defensive line. Marissa didn't hesitate. "Ramirez, take Alpha Squad and hold this position. Ethan, you're with me." The pair sprinted toward the relay, weaving through the chaos. Plasma bolts sizzled past them, some missing by inches. Ethan could feel the heat on his skin, but Marissa's unwavering focus kept him moving. As they neared the dome, its scale became even more imposing. The structure hummed with energy, and the air around it seemed to ripple like a mirage. A Zelthanian captain emerged from the shadows, its bioarmor glowing as it drew twin energy blades. "Go!" Marissa shouted, stepping between Ethan and the alien. Her rifle barked as she fired, but the captain deflected each shot with terrifying speed. It lunged, forcing her to dodge and counter with her exosuit-enhanced reflexes. Ethan reached the relay's access panel and connected his terminal. Lines of alien code filled his screen, but he didn't need to understand it. His program was designed to interface automatically. As the sequences aligned, he began the upload. Behind him, Marissa fought with everything she had. The Zelthanian captain was relentless, its movements a blur of lethal precision. Marissa's suit enhanced her speed and strength, but she could feel the strain with every strike and counter. "I can't hold it much longer," she yelled. "Just a few more seconds." Ethan replied, his fingers dancing over the keys. The Zelthanian captain feinted left, then struck Marissa's rifle, sending it spinning out of reach. She barely managed to block its next attack with her arm guards, but the force drove her to one knee. The captain raised its blades for the killing blow. Suddenly, the dome shuddered. A pulse of energy rippled outward, and the captain froze mid-strike. Its armor flickered, the shimmering surface distorting as if caught in a glitch. Marissa didn't hesitate. She drove her combat knife into the gap between its plates, and the alien collapsed with a metallic groan. Ethan turned, his face pale but triumphant. It worked! Their bioarmor systems are fried. They're vulnerable. Marissa retrieved her rifle, breathing hard. Then let's finish this. The human forces, emboldened by the disruption, surged forward. The Zelthanian soldiers faltered, their once impervious armor now a hindrance as it shorted out and constricted their movements. The humans pushed the advantage, systematically dismantling the alien defenses. By the time the dust settled, the dome was in ruins, and the remaining Zelthanians had retreated. The jungle was silent once more, save for the distant hum of evac ships arriving to extract the human troops. Ethan sank to the ground, his body trembling with exhaustion. Marissa placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression equal parts relief and respect. You did it, Calloway. We did it. The battlefield had settled into an eerie stillness, the jungle's natural sounds slowly reclaiming their domain. Marissa stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at the smoldering remains of the Zelthanian relay. It had been a grueling battle, but they had won, against all odds. Ethan sat nearby, his back against a broken tree trunk. His terminal was powered down, resting in his lap like an exhausted companion. Ramirez and the remaining troops were securing the area, but Ethan couldn't shake the hollow ache in his chest. He'd saved the day, sure, but the cost of the mission weighed heavily on him. Calloway, Marissa called, walking over. Her exosuit was battered, her face smudged with ash, but her posture was as resolute as ever. You don't look like someone who just outsmarted an empire. Ethan forced a weak smile. I think I'm too tired to feel proud. Marissa chuckled softly, sitting down beside him. You did good. Without that little brain of yours, we'd all be worm food. He shrugged, his gaze distant. A lot of good soldiers didn't make it. I keep wondering if there was something more I could have done. Her tone softened. That's the weight we carry. Every mission, every choice. You'll never forget them, but you'll honor them by making sure their sacrifice means something. Ethan nodded, though the knot in his stomach didn't ease. What about the Zelthanians? Do you think they'll be back? Marissa's jaw tightened. Probably. But they'll think twice before underestimating us again. As the evac ships descended, their engines stirring up clouds of ash and debris, Ramirez jogged over. Command just sent word. They want us back at base for debriefing. Guess they're eager to hear how a bunch of humans managed to spook an entire empire. Marissa smirked. Let's not keep them waiting. She offered Ethan a hand. Come on, genius. Time to share your masterpiece. Ethan hesitated before taking her hand. Masterpiece might be overselling it. Lucky improvisation, maybe. Ramirez slapped him on the back as they headed toward the ships. Don't sell yourself short, kid. That lucky improvisation just changed the game. The journey back to the base was a mix of relief and exhaustion. As they disembarked, they were greeted by a crowd of engineers, medics, and fellow soldiers, all eager to hear the tale. Ethan felt a pang of awkwardness as the attention shifted to him. He'd never been one for the spotlight. Inside the command tent, the atmosphere was more subdued. A stern-faced general stood at the center of a holographic display, his hands clasped behind his back. Lieutenant Arden, Specialist Calloway, Sergeant Ramirez, he began, nodding to each of them. I've read the initial reports. I want to hear it directly from you. Marissa stepped forward, recounting the mission with crisp, military precision. She detailed the jungle ambush, the disarray caused by Ethan's illusion, and the final assault on the relay. When she finished, the general turned to Ethan. Specialist Calloway, he said, his tone measured. This glyph of yours, how exactly did you come up with it? Ethan hesitated, glancing at Marissa for reassurance. It wasn't entirely my idea, sir. It's based on old Earth mathematics, fractal patterns, and neural algorithms. I thought the Zelthanians' tech might be vulnerable to sensory overload if we could mimic their own systems against them. The general raised an eyebrow. You thought correctly. Command is already looking into how we can integrate this strategy into broader operations. Ethan blinked. You want to weaponize it? The general's expression didn't waver. This war isn't over, specialist. We'll need every edge we can get. After the debriefing, Ethan found himself back in the hangar, staring at the jungle through the open bay doors. The weight in his chest had only grown heavier. His glyph had worked, too well, perhaps. It wasn't just a tool for survival anymore. It was a blueprint for something far larger and more dangerous. Marissa joined him, her voice cutting through his thoughts. You're thinking too hard again. I don't know if I did the right thing, Ethan admitted. If they use this on a bigger scale, what if it hurts more people than it helps? She sighed, leaning against the doorway. It's not easy, is it? Knowing your choices ripple out farther than you can see. No, he said quietly. It's not. Marissa rested a hand on his shoulder. Here's the thing, Calloway. You don't get to control what they do with your work. But you get to decide how you use it moving forward. Make sure it's for the right reasons. Ethan nodded, her words settling over him like a bomb. He wasn't sure he'd ever find peace with the consequences, but Marissa was right. He had a choice, one he'd have to make every day. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the jungle in shades of gold and shadow, Ethan felt a flicker of resolve. The Zelthanians had underestimated humanity's ingenuity and resilience, but he'd underestimated something too, his own capacity to adapt, to endure, and to shape the future. He wasn't just a technician anymore. He was part of something bigger, something messy and terrifying but undeniably human. And that, he realized, was the most terrifying weapon of all. The most terrifying weapon human armies bring to war.